everybody. My name's Jaclyn Napoleon. I'm the Director of Graduate Recruitment and Admissions at Rockefeller College of Public Affairs and Policy at UAlbany. And today we're talking with Dr. Timothy Weaver, who is a professor in our political science department here at Rockefeller. So we'll jump right in. So hello, Dr. Weaver. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yep, hello everyone. So I'm an associate professor here in the political science department. I am in the subfield of public policy, and I teach a variety of courses in public policy and also in American politics. Courses at the graduate level include urban policy, which focuses on politics and policy around cities, the growth of cities, how cities operate economically and politically and socially. And I teach at the undergraduate level classes to do with American political development, urban politics, and courses on race, class, and culture.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit about sort of one of your favorite courses that you like to teach.
So I really love to teach my urban policy course at the graduate level because we get to grips with some of what I consider to be some of the most important questions of politics, which are how is power distributed? Why does it matter? Who does it benefit? Who loses out? How have things changed over time, and how might things change in the future? And so we're able to answer all of those questions by focusing on particular places, particular cities, and particular moments in time. And usually our courses are fairly small, so kind of 10 to 12 students, and that allows us to have nice, deep discussions about some of these important topics, where students can draw on their own experiences of living in a city or working in a city, as well as talking about the state of the academic literature.
Is there like an example of a project or a policy solution that you focused on in your class that the students were really able to embrace, or a certain type of project that they were able to really, get in deep and learn a lot more about the issues?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've dealt with in some detail, which really kind of maps onto some of the big discussions happening in America right now about the protests and the role of the police, is that we've talked and studied the rise of mass incarceration in American politics by looking at how that's happened in particular cities. And so students have been particularly interested in that. And clearly it's something which is central to American politics now. It has major impacts on questions of race and inequality. And so we're able to, talk about some of these big questions, these big transformations in American politics by focusing on, how has policing worked in American cities? How has mass incarceration been constructed? And how might it be combated?
Cool. Very interesting. So what are, I guess, when you're in your class and you're teaching your students, what do you find gratifying about teaching?
Well, I think the big thing that I find gratifying about teaching is getting students to see things differently. And what I always try and do in my courses is to question the conventional wisdom and enable students to think critically about the conventional wisdom. And so some of my favorite sort of teaching experiences include moments of sort of aha moments when the light bulb goes on and students suddenly see things a bit differently. Now, I don't really mind what view they end up taking. I just want to see them thinking carefully and critically about big, important questions. And so when I can see students doing that, maybe engaging with each other and arguing with each other on the basis of careful research and reasoning, then that, to me, that's the highlight of teaching at the graduate level especially.
So when you think about a strong student in your program, it sounds like they need to think critically for sure. What do you think are some of the other things a strong student brings to the table in a graduate class in political science?
A strong student, as you say, needs to think critically. They need to read critically as well. So one of the things that you'll learn in grad school is kind of a new way of reading. You're going to be assigned a lot more reading than you would be at undergrad. But you don't need to read every page. And so one of the things you need to learn how to do is to be able to deal with lots of material, but be able to approach it in such a way that you can distill the big important argument and think about different readings in relation to one another. So it's not going to be a bunch of isolated short readings. It's going to be a bunch of big connected readings, and a good student is able to make those connections, or at least raise the kind of questions in class that can help them and help their colleagues in the class draw those big connections and draw some conclusions as well.
Great. So what about your field keeps you engaged and motivated?
Well, I did a PhD in politics because I was interested in politics, and I've always been interested in politics. And what that's always meant to me is trying to work out why things are the way they are and how we might be able to change them. And so I've always been motivated by some of these big questions of how is power distributed, how are resources distributed, how might they be redistributed in different ways. And so my kind of focus in my own academic work, but also in my teaching, is also to stress these important questions, to think about how contingent things are and how things might change. But in order to work out how to change the world, we first have to understand how it was built and developed in the way that it has been. And so those are the big questions that really motivate my own research, but also my teaching too.
Well, and you come to us from an interesting background because you are a native of the UK. So what would you say are one or two things that really stand out to you in terms of differences between our two countries?
Well, there are lots of big differences, and it's difficult to know where to start. One of the, I guess, in education, one of the big differences, and it matters for graduate school, which is, I think at the undergraduate level, the big difference is there's a lot more of assessment, a lot more assessment for undergraduates. And whereas in the UK, you're assessed less frequently and you're more independent. And in a sense, when you move from being an undergrad here to being a graduate student, you're going to need to be much more self-directed. You're going to have fewer assessments, and therefore you have to take more responsibility for your own learning, which is something I think which happens more regularly at the undergraduate level in the UK, and that was my experience. And so that's one of the adjustments that you have to make, but also an adjustment I had to make as a teacher, which is to give students more assignments, which meant more grading for me.
A little bit more work on your end. So that's a good segue to kind of my last question is you gave a little bit of advice in what you said, but what would be another piece of advice as a student considering graduate programs? What do you think are sort of the vital things students need to be thinking about?
Yeah, so certainly just that big transition between being an undergrad and a graduate student, it's going to be, you're going to meet fewer times, maybe once a week for longer, and there's going to be less checking in. And so therefore you need to be able to really plan out your time, be well organized, don't let things mount up. Because if you let the work for 3 or 4 graduate courses mount up, then you're going to get swamped. The thing, though, to be aware of is that we're all here to help, and we want you to succeed, and we're not just going to let you languish. But the crucial thing is to ask for help, ask early and ask often, because we all want to help, we can help, but it's easier to solve any problems the sooner we know about them. And so if you're feeling overwhelmed, then you need to understand that that's probably the same feeling that all of your other fellow students have, even if they don't say it. And there are lots of ways that you can get help from fellow students, from faculty, from staff, and we're all really here to support your learning process and your success. So be prepared to do lots of work, be prepared to be well organized, but if things are major challenges arise, then know that we're all here to help.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Weaver. We really appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day.
You too.